Welcome back. The U.S. announced new trade rules to China yesterday, reducing their access to U.S. microchip technology. Beijing says the order seriously disrupts the security of the global industrial and supply chains, as well as fair competition. Joint ventures and U.S. capital firms that do business with China are among those that are targeted. For more on this topic, joining us is Mark Lee, the president of the Lee Group Michigan. Mark, thank you for being here with us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
So explain just simply what this is. This is kind of a complex potential issue here. What does this mean in the most simplistic terms?
Yeah, let's start out with something very basic. What is artificial intelligence? And what artificial intelligence, quite frankly, is we as humans, right, we can think of ideas. We use our own human interaction and intelligence to identify and solve problems. Artificial intelligence is using technology, right, to simulate our thought process. So as a human, we come up with ideas. Artificial intelligence allows you to use simulations and make changes to what the thought process should be. So what's happening, put in very simplistic terms, what the president is saying is we need to protect our artificial intelligence going overseas, in this case to China, because if the artificial intelligence is used, i.e. technology, other people have the opportunity of stealing the ideas and taking our intellectual property. What he's basically saying is we want to protect our intellectual property overseas.
How is this different, let's say, in China than any other country around the world that we do business with and things like that?
Quite frankly, China is a superpower. And they view themselves as being the #1 power out there, and they want to continue to challenge the U.S.'s thought process. So therefore, from a technology standpoint, they feel they're #1, and they want to simply step in and steal whatever ideas or concepts from the U.S. So in other words, they're threatening us. They can be a perceived threat to us in terms of stealing this technology for their own internal use.
What does the ban mean for your average person out there? How would the average person be impacted here potentially?
You know, potentially, for example, from a military standpoint, what the president's trying to do is to protect military secrets from being sold. From an average consumer standpoint, think about your cell phones. Think about technology that we have. Someone could actually use artificial intelligence in terms of your cell phone and control the information that's being shared with you. So something as simplistic as that. We've heard about hacking. This is another form of hacking that could certainly impact you as a consumer, from your bank accounts to your mobile technology to your alarm systems at home. So it has major implications for you as a consumer.
You know, you mentioned that, and we've seen a lot in the news the last few months about TikTok and the bans on government phones, and it's banned across the country and things like that in different parts. Is it similar to this in a sense, where they're afraid that the Chinese government is essentially spying?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, how many times have you heard, people feel like they're being spied on right now from the U.S. government in terms of the technology, i.e. cell phones, for example. So that's one of the biggest concerns. One of the biggest concerns is that China could use this information, artificial intelligence, if you will, to start spying on you again. Again, whether it's your bank accounts, whether it's the phone calls that you make, whether in terms of hacking. So that's why I think the ban is a good idea. Let me just clarify, it's okay to have open competition, to have global markets and market capitalization, if you will. But the issue is the U.S. needs to protect its intellectual property, which ultimately protects you and me and our government and our military as normal consumers.
Is tension that high that this is essentially necessary right now? I mean, it seems like there's already this tension that's building and building between the U.S. and with China. But is this only going to elevate that?
Absolutely. I talked to some people today who thought this could elevate potentially somewhere down the road in terms of a Cold War. I mean, the tensions right now politically, I'm not getting into a political conversation, but the tensions between the U.S. and China are high. At its highest level it's probably ever been. And so China views us as a threat. The U.S. views China as a threat in terms of our national security, in terms of intellectual property.
I don't know if you know this, but I will ask it. Is there a threat? I mean, is there essentially a threat in your mind that this is necessary?
I cannot predict the future. Obviously, I'm not in the government. I think in terms of the potential.
Meaning to justify Biden administration's ban here. I mean, do you think there's enough of a threat here that this ban is justified?
And let me tell you, I think the answer is yes. And let me tell you why. The U.S. has intelligence. We have intelligence agencies. They have information out there. They have access to information that you and I don't have. So anytime the government, the federal government, wants to make a move like that, they're making this decision based on a perceived threat, the potential for a threat, and also based on intelligence as well.
Well, China says the order seriously disrupts the security of the global industrial and supply chains. Is that accurate?
We've got to be very careful about from China's perspective in terms of what they say, right? We know that it's basically an authoritarian government, if you will, for lack of a better phrase. So we know that they have not always been honest in terms of how they responded to certain situations verbally. So I would take anything that China says with a grain of salt.
All right, well, Mark Lee is going to be back with us in a moment. We're going to continue this conversation. We're back after this.
Get more news and next weather now. CBS News Detroit is streaming whenever you need us. Download Pluto TV, free on your connected TV or smartphone. Scroll to local news, choose CBS News Detroit, and don't forget to add us to your favorites.
I don't know if there's been a better time to start a brand new news operation.
The newsroom was pretty much starting from scratch.
It's fresh, it's innovative.
Lots of energy, lots of passionate reporters.
Knowing what we're starting here puts so much joy in my heart.
We have reporters who are embedded in these communities.
Many people throughout St. Clair Shores have been fighting to save this water tower.
If there's a miracle out there, get a hold of me.
We are part of the neighborhood. Our newsroom is part of your neighborhood.
Residents here on Stansbury say they are fed up with all this flooding that keeps happening.
We shouldn't have to live like this.
Telling the stories that otherwise nobody would know about.
Now, AJ, you went to the downtown boxing gym and you really got to see how this gym is impacting kids' lives.
Yeah, Chris, as soon as I walked in the building, it was very uplifting.
It is a boxing gym, but it's more than boxing. You know, we do homework. We help them with the SAT.
When it comes to the weather, it's forecasting what's going to fall on your driveway, when is it going to happen, and how might it actually affect your day-to-day life.
Hundreds of people continue to call in reporting problems throughout the county.
Cleanup crews working all throughout Metro Detroit.
Get them down and get them cleaned up.
Local news to me means we're in your community, we're telling stories that matter to you, that affect you, that maybe we can get change and things done in your community.
She was born without a right arm, and then her legs didn't grow, I guess, the way that they should have.
But for 20-year-old Fortune High School alum Sumaya, she doesn't let that, or anything else for that matter, get in her way.
So you have a favorite button over there?
Yeah, you want to press it?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and...
This is my favorite.
I hope everyone watching that piece in particular says, I want to help that little girl and help that family and help get her to college.
Well, we are rethinking the way local news is done in the 21st century and how to tell the most important stories in a compelling way.
You can get news anywhere, but for us, we're a fresh face with a new perspective, and we're trying to make a difference in the community to tell stories that matter to you.
I think we're here to listen and actually hear what you're saying, and we're putting together a newscast that will show that.
I want to tell those people's stories because it's needed. Detroit is ready. Get ready, because here we come.
Reporting in Dearborn Heights.
Live in Wayne County.
Reporting in Adrian.
Live in Livonia.
Reporting from South Lyon, Kelly Vaughn.
CBS News Detroit.
President Biden unveiled new bans on investments in China. The executive order says these new rules are a measure of national security. Still with us is Mark Lee, the president of the Lee Group Michigan, to break down this new executive order from Joe Biden, the president. And we talk about investments there. What could this mean for people that, let's say, have investments, have stocks in Chinese-based technology companies?
They can simply invade the stock market. They can invade your personal financial picture. So what does that mean? A lot of times we're trading online right now, correct? And so someone can control that from outside of that firewall if they have access to the accounts. That's what we're saying. I think that's why this ban is important, because we want to protect your investments. For example, let's say you go in and you want to extract money out of an ATM using your card, or you want to access your stock online. All of a sudden, you're locked out. You have no access to your online account. Or you get in and all of a sudden $5,000 is missing. That's all called hacking. So from a personal perspective, as we referenced earlier, anything that touches a computer, anything that touches technology is at risk.
With this executive order, this ban right now, do you think it would be wise for Americans that have stocks in Chinese companies to pull that money out?
I can't answer that. I'm not a financial advisor. The best way for me to answer that question will be for you to talk to your financial advisor. They're an expert in that area. I'm not. I always advise people, if you have any questions about your financials, your personal investments, whatever the case might be, insurance, make sure you talk to the expert. They can provide you with the proper advice and counsel.
As far as technology is concerned, the microchips, we saw it a couple years ago. There was the shortage during the pandemic and everything else, and a lot of these microchips come from China. What could the impact there be as we talk about automobiles and everything going on, of course, right here in Detroit with the big three automakers?
Well, that's going to impact significantly the supply chain management. So when we had that microchip challenge last year, for example, we saw people waiting 9 months to a year to get a vehicle. And if we don't get that situation resolved because of the situation in China, you're going to see that again. You're going to see Detroit automakers are going to be, you're not going to have the microchips. If you're going to order a vehicle, you're not going to get it within 4 to 6 weeks. It's going to take you 6 to 9 months, if not longer, to get those microchips. So one of the things that we can do is to try to bring the production of the microchips back into the States. So produce them domestically as opposed to becoming so reliant upon the global markets to do that for us.
What could the domino effect here be with President Biden's ban on the situation with China right now?
The domino effect could be, as you mentioned earlier, I think it could be an escalation in terms of our relationship with China. The other domino effect is our allies. Will our allies come to the U.S.'s defense? Are they going to support? And from a business standpoint, the other domino effect, this can affect your business because, again, your businesses are tied into technology. And so there could be a domino effect affecting your business. From a military standpoint, trade secrets. And that's one of the reasons that President Biden is trying to impose this ban, is that these individuals over in China could tap into our trade secrets, get access to them, and anticipate the U.S.'s next move from a military standpoint.
What do you think the U.S. expects to gain from limiting these high-tech investments in China right now?
I think what they're trying to maintain is what this thing is called security. At the end of the day, we've had a lot of conversations here. We talked about a lot of different topics, but the bottom line is to protect our citizens' best interest, is to protect our security, if you will, of the military, and is to protect the best interest of every American citizen, every business out there, and anything that touches technology.
And so for a person watching tonight that says, okay, well, is this going too far? What would you say to them?
I would suggest, again, from my perspective and my personal opinion, I don't think that the president is going too far. I think this is necessary. I would tell that person, look at the number of hacks that have been out there. Look at how—
And a lot of that was blamed on Russia. And now we're saying potentially China as well.
So if you're saying, if you're questioning what's going on, is to look at the historical context over the last several years in terms of the hacks that are going on, as you mentioned, with Russia and other potential hacks. And the last thing I would say is, how important is your security out there? How important is your identification to you personally?
Well, this is a delicate situation in the sense because it directly impacts the economy.
Absolutely. And we don't want, right now the economy is getting stronger, right? Unemployment's down, jobs are coming back. But anytime technology is engaged, anytime anyone has the threat of your security through technology, it does have a potential economic impact on this country as well.
It certainly does. And when you look at this entire situation, the Chinese developments could undermine U.S. national security, as we're talking about. What do you believe the likelihood of that is? We've talked about national security here, but the likelihood of things going awry?
There's always that risk. But I have every confidence in the U.S. government to try to minimize that risk. And if you look at what the U.S. government has said is, they don't want to alienate the rest of the globe. They want—
Do you believe it will do so, though?
Potentially. I think potentially it could certainly escalate the situation with China. China has its allies over there as well. So if there's a potential risk here, the potential risk is not only will the escalation continue with China, but also with its allies. So that is a potential perceived risk.
Well, it's really obviously a very delicate balance here because there are some risk and reward here. Obviously, protecting the country is number one, but the economy aspect, when we talk about the chips, when you talk about investments, and you talked about the domino effect that it could have, and so it's been obviously a very difficult thing. And when you think about the AI technology, we talked about TikTok and everything else, it's obviously a very, very delicate situation.
It's very delicate. I would encourage anyone to make sure that you have the proper level of personal security when it comes to your technology. Something as simple as putting your ATM card in an ATM machine. And what I mean by that, there is proof where people have actually put up the size of the ink pen head, a camera in the upper corner of an ATM machine. And when you go up and you key in your 4-digit number, whatever the number is, they're actually taking your picture. And it can actually create a card and start accessing your resources. So what I'm saying here is use your personal security systems to protect yourself personally, but also make sure you're still aware with what's going on globally, because that does have an impact on what's going on locally.
Well, this is such an interesting conversation as we finish up our conversation with the Biden administration banning the techs overseas with China. Thank you so much, Mark Lee from the Mark Lee Group of Michigan. Thank you so much for this insight tonight.
I appreciate it. Thank you. My pleasure.
And we're right back after this.